Riley stormed into the crowded Seattle cafe, her designer heels clicking like gunfire on the hardwood floor. She was 19, untouchable, and furious her phone call with her father had just ended in a screaming match over her credit card limit. The world owed her, and she was ready to collect. She scanned the room, her sharp blue eyes landing on a woman sitting alone in the corner. The woman, probably in her mid-30s, wore a faded military jacket, her short, dark hair streaked with gray. A scar traced her left cheek, and her hands, rough and calloused, cradled a chipped coffee mug. Riley smirked. Perfect target. She needed to vent, and this stranger who looked like she'd crawled out of a war zone was it. "Hey, soldier girl," Riley called out, loud enough for heads to turn. "What's with the sad puppy vibe? Lose your girlfriend in the trenches or something?" Snickers rippled through the cafe. The woman didn't flinch, her hazel eyes lifting slowly to meet Riley's. There was no anger there, just a quiet weight that made Riley's smirk falter for a split second. She doubled down. "What, no comeback? Bet you're used to taking orders, huh?" The woman Sarah, though Riley didn't know her name yet, set her mug down with deliberate calm. "You done?" she asked, her voice low, steady, like she'd faced worse than a spoiled teen's taunts. Riley froze. Something about Sarah's gaze, unyielding yet soft, hit her like a punch she couldn't dodge. Riley wasn't used to being seen. Not really. At home, her parents saw her as a problem to manage, too loud, too demanding, too much. At school, she was the queen bee, her popularity built on sharp wit and sharper cruelty. But this woman, this stranger, looked at her like she was more than her tantrums, like she could be something else. It unnerved her. She tossed her hair and stormed to the counter, ordering a latte with an extra shot, her voice loud to drown out the unease creeping up her spine. Sarah watched her go, her expression unreadable, then returned to her coffee. Riley didn't know it yet, but that moment was the spark that would unravel her carefully crafted world. The next day, Riley was back at the cafe. She told herself it was for the coffee, not because she couldn't stop thinking about the veteran's piercing gaze. She'd spent the night replaying the encounter, her usual smug satisfaction replaced by a nagging restlessness. Who was that woman? Why hadn't she bitten back? Sarah was there again, same corner, same jacket, reading a worn paperback. Riley hesitated, then strode over, her confidence a mask. "Back for more," she said, sliding into the seat across from Sarah without asking. "Or do you just live here?" Sarah marked her page and closed the book. "I like the coffee," she said simply. "And the quiet." Usually. Her tone wasn't hostile, but it carried a weight that made Riley shift uncomfortably. "Whatever," Riley muttered, but she didn't leave. She sipped her latte, stealing glances at Sarah. The scar on her cheek looked deeper up close, like a story etched into her skin. Riley wanted to ask about it but didn't know how. Instead, she said, "You're not from around here, are you? You've got that lost vibe." Sarah's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Born and raised in Seattle. Just been away a while." She didn't elaborate and Riley didn't push. Not yet. But something about Sarah's calm, her refusal to rise to Riley's bait, made her want to keep talking, to keep poking until she got a reaction. Over the next week, Riley found herself at the cafe every day. She didn't admit it, but she was drawn to Sarah's quiet strength, the way she seemed to carry a whole world inside her without flaunting it. Each visit, Riley tossed out jabs about Sarah's clothes, her book choices, her boring life. Sarah never snapped back. Instead, she'd answer with a question or a quiet observation that left Riley fumbling. One day, Riley went too far. "Bet you're alone because no one can stand you," she said, her voice cutting. "What's it like being a reject?" The words hung in the air, crueler than she'd meant. Sarah's face tightened just for a moment, and Riley saw something raw flash in her eyes, pain, deep and unguarded. "I know what it's like to lose people," Sarah said softly. "Do you?" The question wasn't an attack, but it hit Riley like one. She opened her mouth then closed it, her chest tight. For the first time she felt small. That night Riley couldn't sleep. Sarah's words echoed in her head, stirring memories she buried her older sister, Emma, who'd left home years ago after a fight with their parents. Emma, who'd been Riley's anchor until she wasn't. Riley hadn't cried over her in years, but now tears burned her eyes. She didn't understand why Sarah, a stranger, was pulling these feelings out of her. But she knew she had to go back. The next morning, Riley arrived at the cafe early, her usual bravado gone. Sarah was there as always, but this time Riley didn't sit across from her. She stood, awkward, clutching her bag. "I'm sorry," she blurted. "For yesterday. I didn't mean it." Sarah looked up, surprised but not unkind. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chair. Riley did, her hands fidgeting. "Why do you keep coming back, Riley?" Sarah asked, her voice gentle but direct. Riley froze. She hadn't told Sarah her name. "How, you wear a monogrammed bracelet," Sarah said, nodding at Riley's wrist. "And you're not as tough as you think you are." Riley laughed, a shaky sound. "I'm kind of a mess, huh?" "We all are," Sarah said. "Some of us just hide it better." That was the moment Riley stopped seeing Sarah as a target. She was still a mystery, but one Riley wanted to unravel, not with cruelty, but with something new. Curiosity. Maybe even respect. Over the next few weeks, Riley and Sarah fell into an unspoken routine. Riley would show up at the cafe, sometimes with a barb, sometimes with a question, and Sarah would meet her with that same unshakable calm. It infuriated Riley at first. How could someone be so steady, so unaffected? But slowly she started to crave it. Sarah's presence was like a lighthouse in the storm of her life. Riley's world was chaos. Her parents' marriage was crumbling, their fights echoing through their sprawling Seattle mansion. Her friends, once her loyal court, were starting to drift, tired of her sharp edges. And Emma, her sister, was a ghost, no calls, no texts, just a void where family used to be. Riley didn't talk about this with Sarah, but somehow Sarah seemed to know. One rainy afternoon, Riley arrived at the cafe soaked, her mascara streaking down her face. She'd fought with her mother that morning, a screaming match about college applications and wasting her potential. Riley had stormed out, and now here she was, dripping wet and raw. Sarah didn't comment on her appearance. She just slid a napkin across the table and said, "Rough day." Riley laughed bitterly, wiping her face. "Rough life." She didn't mean to say more, but the words spilled out. "My mom thinks I'm a failure. My dad only cares about his money. And my sister. She's gone. Just gone." Her voice cracked and she hated herself for it. Sarah listened, her eyes steady, not judging. When Riley finished, Sarah leaned back, her fingers tracing the edge of her mug. "I lost someone too," she said finally. "Her name was Lena." Riley's breath caught. She'd never heard Sarah talk about her life, not like this. "Was she your girlfriend?" she asked, hesitant. Sarah nodded, her gaze distant. "We met in the army. She was my everything. Brave, stubborn, always laughing. She didn't make it back." Her voice was quiet, but it carried a grief so heavy Riley felt it in her bones. "I'm sorry," Riley whispered, meaning it this time. She wanted to ask more, what happened, how Sarah survived it, but the pain in Sarah's eyes stopped her. Instead, she reached out, her hand brushing Sarah's. It was impulsive, but Sarah didn't pull away. For a moment they sat there, the rain pounding outside, the world shrinking to just the two of them. After that, something shifted. Riley stopped throwing insults and started asking questions. About Sarah's time in the army, her favorite books, why she always drank black coffee. Sarah answered sparingly, but each detail felt like a gift. Riley learned Sarah had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, that she'd come back to Seattle to rebuild a life that felt foreign now. She learned Sarah loved poetry, especially Audre Lorde, and that she volunteered at a shelter for homeless veterans. Riley started to see Sarah not as a stranger, but as someone who'd walked through fire and come out stronger. It made her own problems, her parents, her friends, her anger feel smaller, but not insignificant. Sarah had a way of making Riley feel like her pain mattered, even if it wasn't born of war or loss. One evening, Riley arrived at the cafe to find Sarah gone. Panic gripped her. She asked the barista, who shrugged and said Sarah hadn't been in all day. Riley's mind raced. Had she pushed too far, said something wrong? She didn't have Sarah's number, didn't even know her last name. The thought of losing her, this unexpected anchor, made Riley's chest ache. She wandered the rainy streets, her phone buzzing with texts from her friends, but she ignored them. She ended up at a park near the cafe, sitting on a bench, soaked and shivering. That's where Sarah found her. "You okay?" Sarah asked, sitting beside her, an umbrella shielding them both. Riley shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. I thought you were gone. Like everyone else. Sarah's expression softened. I'm not going anywhere, kid. She hesitated, then added, I was at the shelter today. Lost track of time. Riley nodded, relief washing over her. Tell me about it. The shelter. So Sarah did. She talked about the veterans she helped, the ones who reminded her of Lena, the ones who gave her purpose. Riley listened, hanging on every word, and for the first time, she felt something bigger than herself. She wanted to be part of it. The next day, Riley showed up at the cafe with a plan. I want to help, she said, her voice firm. At the shelter. I can do whatever you need. Sarah raised an eyebrow, skeptical but intrigued. It's not glamorous. You sure? I'm sure, Riley said, and she meant it. For the first time in years, she felt like she was reaching for something real. The shelter was nothing like Riley expected. Tucked in a gritty corner of Seattle, it was a squat brick building with flickering fluorescent lights and the faint smell of bleach. Veterans shuffled through, some with haunted eyes, others with defiant grins. Riley felt out of place in her designer jeans, but Sarah's presence grounded her. Sarah introduced her to the team, a mix of volunteers and former soldiers. Riley's first task was sorting donations, clothes, toiletries, canned goods. Her hands, used to swiping credit cards, fumbled with the boxes. Sarah worked nearby, her movements efficient, her voice calm as she directed volunteers. Riley watched her, mesmerized by how she made everyone feel seen, from the gruff old man who called her Sarge to the young woman who barely spoke. At first, Riley was awkward, her usual confidence replaced by uncertainty. She didn't know how to talk to the veterans, didn't know their stories. But Sarah was patient, guiding her without hovering. Just listen, Sarah told her one day. That's what they need most. So Riley listened. She heard stories of war, of loss, of starting over. One veteran, a woman named Carla, told Riley about losing her partner in Iraq, her voice breaking as she described their last night together. Riley thought of Sarah, of Lena, and her throat tightened. She was starting to understand the weight Sarah carried. As weeks passed, Riley became a regular at the shelter. She learned to sort supplies faster, to joke with the veterans, to sit with them in silence when words weren't enough. Her friends noticed her absence, their texts growing snippier, but Riley didn't care. The shelter, Sarah, the veterans, they were real in a way her old life wasn't. One night after a long shift, Riley and Sarah stayed late to clean up. The shelter was quiet, the only sound the hum of the heater. Riley glanced at Sarah, who was wiping down tables, her face softened by the dim light. Why do you do this? Riley asked. The shelter, all of it. It's heavy. Sarah paused, her rag still in hand. Because it's home, she said. These people, they're my family. After Lena, I didn't think I'd find that again. But here I am. Riley's heart ached. She wanted to say something, to ask about Lena, about Sarah's life, but the words stuck. Instead, she said, I'm glad you're here. Sarah smiled, a real one this time, and Riley felt warmth spread through her. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. The next day, Riley's world cracked open. She was at the cafe waiting for Sarah when her phone rang. It was her mother, her voice frantic. It's your father. He's leaving, Riley. He's gone. Riley's knees buckled. She stumbled outside, the phone slipping from her hand. Her parents' fights had been loud, but she'd never thought they'd break. She felt like a kid again, small and scared, the way she'd felt when Emma left. Sarah found her outside, curled on a bench, her face buried in her hands. Without a word, Sarah sat beside her, her shoulder brushing Riley's. I'm here, she said simply. Riley leaned into her, sobbing. Sarah didn't flinch, didn't pull away. She just held space, her presence steady as ever. When Riley finally looked up, her eyes red, she saw something in Sarah's face, compassion. Yes, but also a flicker of something more. It scared her, but it also felt like a lifeline. I don't know what to do, Riley whispered. You don't have to, Sarah said. Just keep going. One step at a time. Riley nodded, clinging to those words. She didn't know it yet, but that moment was the turning point. She was falling not just for Sarah, but for the person she could become with her. Riley's life split in two. At home, her mother was a wreck, drowning in wine and regret, while her father's absence left a hole no one acknowledged. At the shelter, Riley found purpose, her hands steady as she packed meals or sorted clothes. Sarah was the bridge between these worlds, her quiet strength pulling Riley through. Their connection deepened, unspoken but undeniable. Riley caught herself watching Sarah, how her hands moved with precision, how her laugh, rare as it was, lit up the room. She didn't know what to call it, this pull she felt. She'd never liked girls before, never thought about it. But Sarah wasn't just a girl. She was a force, an anchor, a puzzle Riley couldn't stop trying to solve. One evening, as they walked to the bus stop after a shift, Riley blurted, "Do you ever think about loving again? After Lena?" Her heart pounded. She hadn't meant to ask that. Sarah stopped, her breath visible in the cold air. "Every day," she said. "But it's not easy. Love like that. It leaves scars." Riley nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to say she understood, but she didn't. Not fully. Instead, she said, "I think you're brave. Braver than me." Sarah laughed softly. "You're braver than you think, Riley." Those words stayed with her. At home, Riley started standing up to her mother, pushing back against the chaos. She applied to community college, something she'd never considered before. She wanted to be better not just for Sarah, but for herself. But the past wasn't done with her. One night, Riley got a text from an unknown number. "It's Emma. I'm in Seattle. Can we meet?" Riley's hand shook as she read it. Emma, her sister, who'd vanished 5 years ago after coming out to their parents. Riley had been too young to understand, too angry to care. Now the guilt hit her like a wave. She told Sarah the next day, her voice trembling. "She's back and I don't know what to say. I was awful to her, Sarah. I said things." Sarah listened, then said, "You were a kid. You can't change the past, but you can show up now." Riley met Emma at a diner, her heart racing. Emma looked older, her hair dyed blue, her smile tentative. "I missed you," Emma said, and Riley broke, tears streaming as she apologized for the years of silence. They talked for hours, piecing together the lost time. Emma was happy now, living with her girlfriend, building a life. Riley felt a pang, envy maybe, or longing. She told Sarah about it later, her words tumbling out. "She's so free. I want that. I want to be like her, like you." Sarah's eyes softened. "You're already you, Riley. That's enough." Riley wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at her. She was falling for Sarah, and it terrified her. What if she wasn't enough? What if Sarah, with her scars and her strength, couldn't love someone like her? The tension broke one night at the shelter. They were alone restocking supplies when Riley turned to Sarah and said, "I think I'm in love with you." The words hung in the air, raw and reckless. Sarah froze, her eyes wide. For a moment, Riley thought she'd ruined everything. Then Sarah stepped closer, her hand brushing Riley's cheek. "You're trouble," she said, her voice soft, almost teasing. "But you're worth it." They kissed, tentative at first, then fierce, like they'd both been holding their breath for too long. It was messy, imperfect, and perfect. Riley felt like she was waking up. The kiss changed everything. Riley felt alive, like the world had color again. But love, she learned, wasn't a cure, it was a challenge. Sarah was guarded, her heart scarred by loss. Riley was impulsive, her emotions a wildfire. They clashed as often as they connected, but each fight, each reconciliation pulled them closer. Riley threw herself into the shelter, into college, into rebuilding her relationship with Emma. Sarah was there, steady but never smothering, teaching Riley to find her own strength. They spent nights talking about Lena, about Riley's fears, about the future. Sarah opened up about her time in the army, the guilt she carried for surviving when Lena didn't. Riley listened, her heart breaking and healing all at once. One day, Riley found a letter in Sarah's jacket, tucked in a pocket. It was from Lena, written before her last mission. "Live, Sarah. Love again. For me." Riley's eyes stung as she read it. She gave it back to Sarah without a word. But that night, she held her tighter. Months later, Riley organized a fundraiser for the shelter, her first big project. She was nervous, but Sarah was there, cheering her on. The event was a success, the room filled with veterans, volunteers, and Emma, who hugged Riley like she'd never let go. Riley looked at Sarah standing in the crowd, her eyes shining with pride, and felt something settle inside her. This was home. Their love wasn't perfect. Riley still had her sharp edges, Sarah her quiet walls. But they built something real, something worth fighting for. Riley, once a spoiled teen who mocked a stranger, had found purpose, family, and love. Sarah, who thought she'd lost her heart forever, found it again in Riley's fire. One evening, as they sat in the cafe where it all began, Riley took Sarah's hand. "Thank you," she said, "for seeing me." Sarah smiled, her scar catching the light. "Thank you for seeing me back." They sat there, the world moving around them, two imperfect souls who'd found each other. And in that moment Riley knew, love wasn't about being whole. It was about being brave enough to try. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.